Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I have Tim Walter here today, joining me from England. And welcome to High Road to Humanity, Tim.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here today. You guys, this is going to be a really interesting subject. So sit back and relax. I'm going to read his bio so you guys get a feel of what we're going to be talking about today. So for 30 years, starting in 1983, Tim Walter worked as a successful corporate video writer, director, and producer. However, in the early 2000s, his interest in the stressful, deadline-driven corporate world had started to wane because his life had radically changed perspective. Now, check this out, you guys. The family had moved in 1998 and discovered where they now lived contained a ghost. This personality was a delightful, caring soul, and we're going to ask him about this, that the family spoke to using dowsing. She introduced him to the concept of earth energy, which eventually led him to establish a network of international house healers. These are highly sensitive people who help others by communicating with the overseeing subtle energy fields of our existence. So once aligned with this simple ancient process of focused intention and positive heart resonance, we can ride the waves of great change. This process might be considered reality engineering. I like that. It's a spiritual pursuit that seeks to harmonize the seemingly external world through inner practice. Wow. You're my perfect guest for the high road. Tell us your story. I want to hear about this. So tell me all about moving to the house and the ghost, and tell us what happened. Tell the audience.
Yeah, well, as you may have expected, the ghost was not really, I know what we might consider to be an ordinary ghost. When we think about ghosts, we think about the whole, the standard sort of hauntings. Obviously, your audience will be aware that hauntings in a property is not really like the Hollywood image of hauntings. But even so, when we moved into this house in the Welsh borders, which was way back in 1998,
Right.
the way that this spirit's presence was sort of infiltrated into our awareness is the best way to say it. It was infiltrated into our awareness in a very, very, very gentle way. There was no chance of us, very little chance of us actually being scared by what was unfolding. It took quite a while. It took several weeks, if not maybe even a few months, for the fact that we were getting the usual flickering lights and things were disappearing. So I was using tools to do some decorating, and literally, if I put down a hammer, it disappeared. It's like, where's that gone? So things like that. So as I say, the light bulbs and other kind of slightly unusual, but not exceptionally worrying things were happening after we moved into this house.
Was it just to you, or was it to the whole family?
Well, I mean, when we had the light bulbs flickering and the TV would go on and the TV would go off, and we would be trying to play a particular CD that just wouldn't play as well. So that was experienced by the whole family.
Right.
What was happening for me individually, so my subjective awareness was that I was starting to see dark shapes, so figures, people. I mean, that's what they look like out of the corner of my eye. So that sort of peripheral vision, that awareness, that started happening. And I put that down very much to, it's just my imagination, that's fine. It's okay, this is nothing to be kind of concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And There was one occasion where I was in the kitchen making a cup of tea. I do drink quite a lot of tea still, and I put my hand out to pick up the mug, and another arm and hand went out exactly the same, right next to mine here. It wasn't mine. It had a black sleeve on it. It was only there for the briefest of moments, but it was mimicking my action. And again, it was like one of those moments where I stopped and thought,
Were you afraid? Were you
I
afraid?
wasn't afraid, because it was like, did I just see that? And it was so brief. It was like, no, I'm gonna, no, I don't think I did see that, right? So it was like all of these incursions into my subjective awareness, I was able to actually just sort of dismiss. But what happened was, I mean, it was some 18 months or so after we'd moved into the house, all of this kind of was ramping up to that level.
Mhm.
And we had a room out the back, which was kind of a dog leg. It was a big old Georgian townhouse. So that means it's really fundamentally just one room deep, and it goes up 3 floors. And then, but this had been joined onto an old barn area. So it sat out the back, and that space had been used by the previous occupants as like a storeroom. So it was desperately in need of some TLC. So as I learned later on, that was an area where my mother-in-law, for example, she kind of, if she could avoid going out there, she would avoid going into that room, because she was like, really don't like that space. But I didn't know that until later. But nobody else was particularly bothered about it. The neighborhood cats would go in and use it as a litter tray. It was a
Oh,
pretty dreadful space. Yeah, it was horrible. And there was no outside light in it at all. I mean, there's no daylight getting into that space. So, we can talk a little bit about the way that space is, it needs a certain amount of love for it to be a nice optimized space. But that definitely was not a loved space.
right.
And so and again, when I talked about the tools disappearing, when the hammer disappeared or a chisel, I can't actually remember what it was that I was using, and it only happened once on that. Once to me, it happened once to somebody else as well. But that's where I was working when the tool disappeared. Now, the thing was, because the house was in need of some work, we had builders in. We had some builders in to give us some estimates, and one of the guys that came round basically said, "Look, it's a lovely house, but you need to get it spiritually cleared." Right now, this was a builder. This was a guy,
He felt
like,
it. He felt it.
yeah, because and he was the most unlikely sort of person that you would think would ever comment about something. Now, my wife and I didn't know what spiritual clearing was.
Were you
So
religious at all? So you weren't really religious.
no, I mean, I'd been, I describe it as being dragged along to church when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
And that was quite a high C of E service, so high church. So it was very smells and bells, that sort of thing. And it was just complete boredom as far as I was concerned. So it really put me off. So no, not really spiritually aware, not really aware of the fact that I wasn't really kind of into supernatural kind of stuff particularly. I thought, well, there might be ghosts, there might not be ghosts. Generally, I had no particular view on it.
Right.
So when this builder said spiritual clearing, wife and I kind of looked at each other and, asked the questions. Well, what's that? Now, he said, well, my wife clears houses, he said, right? And so we thought, oh, okay,
I do
so
too, just so you know.
yeah, so as I would expect you would.
Yeah.
So I think we had the conversation around, well, how much is it? And then you said, well, it's not anything. She does it for a hobby.
Oh,
So we ended up very, very soon after that conversation having these 3 ladies turn up at our house, and it really was. It was like the 3 witches of Macbeth coming into the house, and they came in with dowsing rods.
Oh,
And that was the first time yeah, exactly. That was the first time I'd seen
yeah, let's
dowsing
see.
rods. I'm just going to pick, yeah, right, yeah. So the bent piece of metal,
Yeah,
and they very, very, very quickly just kind of doused their way round to the back of the house where this derelict, this room that needed the care was.
yeah.
And they started having a conversation between the three of them, and they were saying like, "Well, you've got some dragon lines here." Okay, so what are dragon lines? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And the lead lady, this builder's wife, a lady called Mary, she said, "Oh, and there's a guardian here. There's a person here. Oh, she's lovely. Oh, right. Oh, she just wants to be part of the family." So this was all being picked up with the dowsing rods. This was part of the conversation.
Wow.
So, and we had this conversation probably for about half an hour with these ladies doing their dowsing, using dowsing to talk to this lady, this spirit, this ghost. And that's more or less, we very quickly established that she was a guardian, and as I said, she was there to protect, to look after us as human occupants of the house, to work and keep the earth energy lines, the dragon lines, safe. So to keep those clear, keep those away, keep them just to be doing her job as a guardian, basically. So
What are dragon lines?
dragon lines are earth energy lines. So we call them dragon lines. Some people call
Like
them
ley
dragon lines
lines?
because
Like
yeah,
ley?
well, ley lines are straight alignments that you find on a map. So the best thing to do is to look at a map, and you can plot ley lines. You can identify them with dowsing or whatever, because they're straight lines. They're usually straight alignments of sacred sites, etc., etc. So there's a certain definition of what a ley line is. But earth energy lines are the natural energies of the earth that weave around straight alignments, but they weave like rivers. So dragon lines are traditionally known as the more powerful energy lines, and they're called dragon lines because that kind of stems from feng shui work from the east. So dragon, with the Chinese work and all the rest of it. So basically what we had in simple terms was a couple of earth energy lines that were crossing in that space.
Okay.
And in crossing in that space, it was, well, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but where you've got earth energy lines that cross, you get a vortex of earth energy, and that
Okay, so
really
you had a little vortex back there.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
because the nature of earth energy lines is that they are actually made up of vortices. So if you think about the fact that a line, if you think of DNA, right, we all know what the classic DNA spiral, the double helix spiral, looks like. Right, take that double helix, lay it on the ground, and that is an earth energy line. So you've got patterns, focused
So it's
patterns
spinning.
going
It's
in
spinning.
that double. In that, well, you've got the spiral kind of shape, the double helix shape going lengthwise along it. But equally, as part of its structure, you've also got vertical vortices intermixed with it, right? So you've got these vertical vortices. So you probably are aware of, over there in the States, you've got Sedona, haven't you? Which is known as a big vortex site. It's there are very powerful vortices in Sedona, in particular.
Right.
You also get the similar earth energy vortices at all ancient sacred sites. Okay, so over here we've got places like Stonehenge that everybody knows about, and then you've got Avebury Henge as well. Again, these are down south. You've got major standing stones, ancient Neolithic sacred sites up in the Northern Islands of Scotland.
Right.
They've all got these major vortices.
They do.
And those vortices have a substantial effect on consciousness, on our consciousness.
Okay, now I want to ask a
question. Go back over this in a sec. Yeah, go for it.
Let me ask a couple things. How old was this building? How old?
Well, the the building was Georgian, so it was a couple of 100 years old, 1850s, 1820s, something like that.
But why did she need
Yeah,
to?
it was
Okay,
built.
it was built needs, but why?
Go
Here's
on.
my thing. Why did she need to protect that energy?
Every single house has a guardian. So your house that you're sitting in now will have a guardian energy personality, just like Jane. It's just that Jane had chosen to make her presence felt, to announce herself, because quite frankly, that's what completely changed our lives. Living there completely changed them from that catalyst, that point. So her role of managing um, the earth energy, what we find when we're looking at places is that everything it's yeah, we can go back over this if it doesn't make sense.
Oh, go ahead.
Everything is simply a vibration of matter.
Right.
So right, so we know this because everything from sub-quantum dimension, sub-quantum scale of things, all the way up through the atomic structures into physical form, everything has a massive amount of space between it, and it is literally just a vibrating mass, and including ourselves.
We're energy.
Now,
We're energy.
yeah, it's all yeah, exactly, it's all energy.
Right.
So
Okay.
and so energy just simply vibrates, resonates at different frequencies.
Right.
So your the world that you experience is resonating at a particular frequency, actually, which may, at the moment, it is resonating at such a frequency that we are sharing our two intermixed worlds. Okay.
Right.
When you've got earth energy that is out of sync or out of resonance with the people that are living there, then something needs to happen to bring it into resonance, to bring it into harmony with the people that are living there. So when we've got detrimental earth energy lines, which is what she was talking about, Jane was talking about, in our house, it's because they're out of sync, or we are out of sync with them. Either way, it's still the fact
You need
is
to meld
something has to be brought back into harmony.
balance.
Right?
Balance.
Yeah, exactly. Something has to be brought back into balance, right?
Okay.
And so actually what you've touched on there with that word balance is fundamentally the whole process that we can expand out from the individual person that needs to be brought into balance with their environment, because actually the environment and the person are the same thing, right? Because everything is vibration, everything is energy. Yeah, everything is yeah. So you can actually extrapolate that out and say, well, look at the mess we've got in the world at the moment globally,
Right.
and that's because we globally are out of sync with our seemingly external environment, and that's the nub of it. Because earth energy is not something that is separate; it's absolutely integral to the structure of reality and us.
Right. Now let's rewind a little. Okay.
Yeah.
So the three ladies come in, and they tell you this lady, her name is Jane, and she's protecting the dragon energy, and that's why she's there. And so how do you start to communicate with her, and how does this evolve to where you start to realize all these things that we're talking about?
Yeah. So just to make it clear, the dragon lines, she was protecting the dragon lines from us, or us from the dragon lines. So she was keeping that balance. That was the idea.
Okay.
So they came along and were doing the dowsing. It was obvious that if I wanted to communicate with her, I was going to have to learn to do dowsing. That's the bottom line. It's like, well, if I'm going to live with the ghost, because you see, the thing is, being told that there was this woman in the house that was disincarnate, it was like, I had no reason not to believe them. There was no reason whatsoever, because we weren't paying these ladies. Were they delusional? No, they weren't delusional, because actually you know, what we experienced in that half an hour or so that they were doing that dowsing was so um so real, but it was pretty unusual for my wife and I to experience this, but it also seemed absolutely ordinary. It was like, yes, of course this is the answer to what's been going on. It's like we, you know, I will say it's like we knew already that this is the sort of thing that we were going to be encountering, because it was like, oh yeah, okay, right, well in that case I better learn to douse in
You
order to
just went
talk
with
to
it.
her,
Okay. Now I have
because
a big question.
yeah,
I have a big question. I'm gonna stop you. Because I'm a big connector with God. I get up
yes,
in the morning, I connect with God, divine. You can say spirit, you can say energy,
yes,
say whatever you want, but I connect with our divine creator every day. And
yeah,
so, because I do, when people come to ask me a question, I'm able to answer them through psychic. It's because
yeah,
God gives me the
absolutely,
information, because I'm connected with
yeah,
God. I'm just the conduit, I'm just the information giver. So why
yeah.
didn't you just, why don't they just connect with God? Why did they connect with these dowsing rods? I don't get it. See what I'm
Uh,
saying to you?
well, they're not. No, they're not, because the dowsing is
Like, where's the
the
connection? I'm missing it
right.
here.
This,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So that is simply a very clunky way of doing what you do
Is
as
it
as a
antenna?
sensitive,
Is
as
it
somebody that's
antenna?
tuned. Yeah, it is simply, yes. Well, it's not even that, because we're the antenna.
Right.
That is just the clunky dial. That's the meter on the readout. That's what that is,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
That's all it is. Because dowsing works by the minute muscular reactions in the body.
Okay.
So when you get answers, you get the information come to you
Right.
as
Come.
a psychic. If you're going
Yes.
to use that, yeah, exactly. It's going to come to you, and you've got that, and you know that, and you've been living with that for a long time, and you're sensitive to it, and that's brilliant, because that's that's wonderful. Now, us numpties that aren't quite as sensitive, we need something to focus that that connection. And so dowsing can be used as a way of doing that, because basically that, when I pick that up, that becomes the key to kind of go, oh, okay, right. So we're going to talk to the management upstairs, as my mentor called them, the management. So you call it God. I refer to it as the management. And
Management.
so, um, so, if, so yeah, so the information that that the management want us to pick up on, if it's a conversation with a guardian energy, then the information comes to us, but the dowsing rod responds. It usually comes to this way for a yes, and that way for a no. If it goes that, go on, show a no.
Do you have a message for us?
No,
Do
no,
they have a
not.
message or anything? No? No?
Oh, hang on, no.
No? Why not? No?
Well, yeah, well, it's saying yes, but it's like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to, it's the pressure of doing it for me. I'm not I'm not a, stage medium, you know? It's
Okay.
like, Nancy, you just have to be patient. If something comes through, I'll let you know. But what I'm saying is that is just a lump of metal.
Right.
So, yeah. So, but it's because we're getting a simple yes and no response, then our physiology moves that, right?
Right.
Now, so what it is a very clunky way of tuning in to that information, but it's really great for people that are not as sensitive as you are. So in learning to dowse, and you can dowse with, it doesn't have to be a piece of metal like that. You can use anything. I mean, typically we say go and find a coat hanger and bend it at a right,
Yeah, I was looking.
or
I was
or
looking at
a
my
pendulum. Yeah,
pendulum
yeah,
that I use for yes or
yeah,
no. That's what
yeah.
I.
They right, there you go. So you do it yourself.
I
So it's your body reacting and giving you the information. And then what you learn as you do more and more of it is to pay attention to what's going on inside, which is then when we start to do what you're doing, which is to listen to the voice or look at the images that you're getting given inside. And therefore the subjective experience becomes, you become more like a psychic or a medium,
Right.
but
Well,
everybody can do it, you see.
right.
I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah, we're all psychic. Okay, so now as I'm reading your stuff,
Yeah.
so many questions for you. Um, I guess the
Right.
biggest question, that I wanted to ask you, because you do talk a little bit about connecting with the archangels. When I connect, I either connect with God in my archangels, they bring in information for my clients or for whoever, or for myself or whatever. So
Mm.
how do
Mm.
but you talk about dark entities, and see, that makes me a little nervous. So my question to you is,
Mm.
you know, when you do this dowsing, do you say a prayer? Do you say
Oh,
only
yeah.
those who are holy and divine? And why was she so dark? That is my other question too.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot of people that see dark shapes, that see dark, you know,
Yeah, like
figures, dark figures,
yeah,
right? But
I never had.
really, if you think about it in term, no, that's fine. But at the moment, increasingly, there are more and more people that are seeing and experience, as you know, experiencing more spiritual aspects, so more of the subtle realm aspects.
Yeah,
And if you think about the dark shape, that's really only because the light, in that instance, where a lot of these shapes that you see, they're not dark energies, they're not dark entities. They are
okay.
simply disincarnate people that are not in our vibration, and they haven't got the light of the sun reflecting on them, so we're not picking them up in our same literally we see something because the light bounces off it. That's reflecting blue, or I'm processing that as blue. So, but if there's a disincarnate soul that's passing through this space, it's not necessarily being reflecting the light that is here. So I'm not going to see it necessarily in that
In that way,
frequency.
I see. I see
You
what
see
you're
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
So dark shapes, yeah, in that sense, aren't to be necessarily feared. When we talk about dark entities and the darker aspects of creation that can be found in some spaces, then again, fear isn't the way to uh, work with them and clear them.
Right, it's love.
Well, not in my experience.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so actually the worst thing that people can do is be fearful of them, because apart from anything else, we know damn well, even if you're just fearful of walking down a dark street at night, the more fear that you've got in you anyway. I'm not talking here about even dark entities. I'm talking about just self-generating and self-perpetuating fear. People will just generate it for themselves.
Right.
So when you've got, go on, you want to ask a question? I'll shut up for a second. Go on.
I like what you're telling us, but I have questions, and I just want to ask, how did you, so obviously you established a relationship with her,
Hmm.
call her
Hmm.
Jane, is that right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So now is she part of the family, and do you communicate with her on a daily basis? And how does all of this, and how has this changed you? How has this changed you and your wife and all of this?
Yeah, well, we lived in that particular house for 15 years.
Okay.
And so in those 15 years, Jane was there for most of the time.
Okay.
And what happened in terms of how did it change us, I can only, I mean, I'll mention my wife as we go along here, but I can only really speak for myself, because what it did for me was the big question I had for myself as soon as we met Jane was, how did I not know about this side of life before? Why did I not, what, how did I not see this before? How did I not encounter it? Now, of course, the fact is, I'd been going to church every blinking Sunday, so there was a disconnect there anyway, right, between that. So
Yeah.
it shows you where my headspace was, because I didn't even connect spiritually to that. I also, at the time, the internet was there, 1998. So I did a little bit of Googling at the time, and what happened was looking at the websites that were coming up with ghosts and that sort of thing. I was thinking, like, that's not what I'm encountering here. This is, this is not what I was seeing. And a lot of those websites were ones that were featuring angels and fairies and this sort of thing. And it was like, oh, that's not what I got here. I switched all that off
Got
in
it.
that sense.
Right.
So what happened was I was given a book called The Sun and the Serpent, by Hamish Miller, The Sun and the Serpent.
Okay.
Don't be, just take the title as it is for the moment.
Yeah.
It was a book by Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst, and it was about the story of Hamish Miller as a dowser discovering or rediscovering the earth energy lines that cross southern England from Cornwall right across to Suffolk. And they followed a very major alignment known as the St. Michael alignment, which was a straight alignment that went through Avebury and Glastonbury and places like this.
Mhm.
And basically what Hamish discovered was the roots of a male and female line. So he called the male line Michael and the female line was Mary. So it's the Michael and Mary lines. And they're really well known. And the book, The Sun and the Serpent, is a really popular story of dowsing and of their journey in discovering. They spent 10 years dowsing this line and
Wow.
discovering the process and the connections. And so Hamish was a leader in sort of pulling apart and bringing more information to the world about earth energy.
Mhm.
And there now, certainly in the UK and in the USA, as for so many dowsers. I mean, there's the American Society of Dowsers, and over here in Britain, it's the British Society of Dowsers. And there are, the interest in earth energy is absolutely huge in those organizations, because it's really interesting. If you've got the kind of mind that's like really likes process and technical stuff and detail, then you can get really involved in the details of what is being shown in geometric patterns within earth energy.
Mhm.
But the big thing about earth energy is it's part of our mechanism for connecting to spirit.
Right.
So to God, right? That's the key thing.
As above, so below.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
earth energy. So we exist in this sea of earth energy. We talked about it before, everything being vibration. Earth energy is a really strange name for that sea of energy in which we sit. Now, lines can be doused in it and formed in it, and people see these lines. They're just greater concentrations of electromagnetic energy, geomagnetic energy in that field of vibration. Okay.
Right.
But the key thing is, if you, like I say, earth energy being absolutely everywhere, you can douse for small vortices. So we talked about the vortices that you can find at sacred sites and being very powerful. We talked about Sedona, but there are those similar vortices absolutely everywhere. So the room that you're sitting in now, there will be thousands of vortices within that field of vibrating mass of air, basically oxygen you've got there. So all of that and coming down into the quantum field where all of those atomic particles are made, there's vortices all over the place, and you are made up of vortices. So there's a mass of vortices in that room. But what you can do as dowser is to ask the management upstairs to be shown the most positive and beneficial earth energy power center. We call them power centers. And you'll be taken to a particular vortices that you can sit with and meditate, and that will give you a very much enhanced connection to upstairs.
Okay.
Because you're being shown that wonderful connection. You're being shown the position to benefit from it in that space.
So if you came to the house and you brought your dowser, you could walk through and you could tell me where the strongest vortex was, where I should hang out and really connect to the earth, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, but there's no need to actually be on site to do it. So, if you had a floor plan of your house, then we would be able to identify where the strongest vortices would be by dowsing the floor plan. and you would know that's in your sitting room or in your kitchen or whatever it is.
How do you know it's a
But
positive?
if you're
How do you know it's positive
oh yeah,
energy?
positive. Well, because you're asking for that. That's what you're asking for. Dowsing only works when
Like
you've got to understand what you're tuning
intention,
into. So dowsing, go on.
the intention.
I've got, yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
It's all intention based.
Okay. Now I have another question. So I want to know what you think about this. So every day, because I talk about grounding on the
Yeah,
show all the time.
yeah, yeah,
And what I do is personally, I imagine I have roots going down into the earth, and I think I'm a flower, and I make myself go way down in there every day, because if I don't, I'll be like, woo. And
yeah,
so I do that because I know that I have to be part of the earth to be here and present on the earth. Otherwise, I'll be too up in the air because I'm like way up into my spiritual stuff.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
I do bring down the light, but I also bring up the light. Do you
yeah,
practice that as well?
yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
cool. Okay, so
yeah,
we're on the totally same page here.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. Because we have to be you know this, but I'll say it again anyway. And this is probably what you say to your viewers. You've got to be grounded in order to be able to actually pull you're just floating away. You can't yeah, you're not productive, you're not at your best if you're not grounded.
Mhm.
and really, we are here to embody that energy that is available to us all the time. But
And we
what
haven't been
happens?
using it. We haven't been utilizing it like we should, right?
No, no, exactly, because we've forgotten as a species. We've completely forgotten. So, and that's where we are now, is it? As more and more people are waking up and remembering that that's what we are. That's where we are. The world is not what it seems.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Now I'm real big on going out with my bare feet in the summertime and standing on the ground because I feel like we've lost that. And I bet you do the same thing. It's healing,
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. It is. I mean, I have to say, I'm not a big one for actually doing it myself personally with bare feet. I forget. I mean, I used to a lot,
right?
but yeah, I've forgotten. I've got out of the habit. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll take that on board actually for when it gets warmer again. I'll get
Well,
back out
yeah,
there again
because
with that.
because when you do it and you go out there and stand, you can feel the energy coming up through your feet, and it's actually healing. And I think that's part of what our bodies are missing is that earth vibration that we used to get before we wore real thick sole shoes. I've said this on the show many times.
Yeah,
Whoever invented the sneaker or the tennis shoe really messed up humanity because we were always in touch with the earth because when we walked on the earth, we received that. Now we don't as much. I
yeah,
mean, I
that's
think we
right.
do, but not like we should, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So this has really changed your whole life.
Completely and utterly. Yeah, completely and utterly. I mean, it's not a quick process. People ask me and say, "Well, how did you get from being, picking up a couple of dowsing rods to doing the house healing?" And it's like, well, it's a natural. It's called living. It's the way that I've lived my life. It's just been a process of trying to be the best that I can be. In that typical sort of way that we describe
Right.
it.
Right.
It's a process of self-development because the more I mean, this is partly why I got so keen some years ago in just helping people to learn to dowse. That was my objective at the time, and I used to run little workshops about just learn to dowse and see where it takes you, because the fact is that dowsing is such a terrific door opener.
Mm,
You open this door to a whole aspect of connectivity that a lot of us, like me at that time earlier, had no idea about. So
right.
it's not like it's not like I was born with natural sensitivity, or not a natural medium or anything like that.
Right.
So and it completely changed my life. So I know what opening that door enables, or will, how it will help other people.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, and so you give classes. You have a training course that you give people. It's called the Knights Rose House Healing Training Course. Is that correct?
That's the house healing. Yeah, that's the house healing training course that I run now. I'm on the. I'm actually just about to start, and if anybody, I don't know when this is going to go out, Nancy, but
The next
um,
days I'll get it out for you.
okay, fine, terrific. So, in which case, if anybody is interested in learning about the house healing, then I am running another course. It'll be my sixth group that I'm running um, mid-November. I'm pretty sure it's mid-November,
You do it online.
but it's yeah, it's online. It's online. It's experiential though. Okay, so the course it's over 10 months because what it is about, it's about self-development. You know, the actual act of connecting to upstairs is for a lot of people quite straightforward. Then it's about understanding what you're working with and understanding how the management wants to work with you. And that's even more important than anything else, is once you open that door, let's look at what this connection is about and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to work with it. That's why it's a 10-month course. So it's once a month on Zoom, a couple of hours each time, small groups, because we literally are working and saying, right, what's happened for you in the last, 4 weeks or so. And it can be, it's incredibly rewarding, and it's amazing to see how people blossom.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this is really cool because what I pick up from this is from the Dowsing, you've taught yourself as well as other people how to go within and connect.
mm, yeah,
And
exactly.
another way of connecting and raising our vibration,
Yeah.
realizing what's important in life. I bet your values have completely changed.
Well, values is values is a thing that I had no idea about, and I've never been one of these people that sat down and sort of thought, oh, what are my values? But what's absolutely paramount is the understanding of the power of love. So, and for a bloke to, for a guy to kind of suddenly realize it's like, oh, okay, being a bit dense and slow, it's like, I've got to be working from here, not thinking it through. It's all about what am I feeling and how do I open that sufficiently to actually connect to reality. And that's what makes the big difference to the experience of reality for each of us. And that's the key thing. So you will be really good at connecting from your heart and from living from your heart and doing that automatically. You're connecting to God, as you say, all the time. And therefore, your experience of reality will be very different from what it could be if you weren't, if you were closed hearted, and your reality would have been a completely different experience.
Right, but I
And
have to
this is the
say, I have to be honest with you. I mean, I went through a really bad divorce a
yeah,
couple years,
oh yeah,
and it's what just like you, I was catapulted into, okay, what are you going to do? You can ignore it, or you can go connect and make things better. And I learned, like you did, when you connect, however you do it, whether it's dowsing or whether it's, meditation, or some people do it when they're walking or running.
yeah, yeah,
It's the point that we all individually, each soul has to connect back to God, divine source,
yeah.
whatever you say. I love how you say the management, and that's how we get our direction. Now, I'm curious because when I started doing this every day, then of course I got messages and I started to, do you get messages as well?
I went through a phase where I was connecting to a different guide because I did, obviously I had that relationship with Jane, and I was asking her questions about all sorts of things, but that's not quite what you're talking about. What I did, I went on a mediumship course. Like everybody at some stage goes, "Oh, I think I'll give that a go." So I did a bit of mediumship. Oh, I spent years trying to learn it to a degree, and I did end up doing some channeling of the archetypal energy of Merlin,
Oh,
basically.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and that was
That's
extraordinary.
cool.
It was extraordinary, quite frankly. But I've never been good at being able to be calm enough, and those are the right words, to be calm enough to actually bring through messages for other people. I got to a stage where I was some 6 or so years ago, no more than that, 8 years, no, 10 years, crikey, where I was, you know, I could hear him talking to me,
Right.
and he would give. Basically, I got into the trance mediumship, so he would speak through me.
What do
So I would,
mermaids say?
yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, that was it was whatever was appropriate at the time. But you see, the thing is, so I started kind of offering that to people, and then very quickly realized that that was not for me. It was not the role of medium and stage medium. That kind of role was just not for me
Not
because
what you wanted to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm not that way. I'm an introvert. I'm just, like, just give me peace and quiet and leave me alone, and I'll be very happy.
All right. Now, a couple more things I need to talk to you about before we get out of here today. The first thing I want to ask you, what happened when you moved out of the house, and what about Jane?
So there was a point, as I said, where Jane wasn't with us in the house. Okay, and what actually happened was that she went.
Oh,
She announced. She announced
oh,
one evening. I was sitting there, watching TV, and she just said, "Oh, I'm leaving in a few days."
oh,
What? What? Okay. Another person, another person. I can't remember what she said. How did she describe it? But somebody else will come in and take my place.
really?
And sure enough, about a week later, that's exactly what happened. She went. She left. It was like we went down to talk to her. We used to go. Nikki, my wife, and I used to go and talk to her on a regular basis. Quite often it was a Sunday.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we would go into her what we called Jane's room, which was that room out the back that we'd done up and all the rest of that. And we'd go and talk to Jane. We went in there and she wasn't there. She'd gone. And it was like, oh, that's really weird. That really, really is strange. And then there was like a feeling of a male energy that was present. And it's like, oh, okay. And then so we had that whole kind of dowsing conversation about, oh, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. And we settled on a name for this male energy that was taking her place. Now,
Wow.
yeah. And we thought, at the time, we thought, well, that's that. Now, he was there for probably a year or so, and then Jane came back. And
What?
he it's just like, what exactly? Yeah, what? What is going on here?
She go.
And we never knew. I have no idea. Anyway, so we left so we got into a situation where, in life generally, my wife was in a position where she was sort of thinking of leaving her job. She had enough there. I've always been self-employed, so I could live anywhere as long as I could at that time, to get to a camera and editing package and that sort of thing. Because I used to make video programs for companies. Although I had really lost interest in doing that when the spiritual stuff started to come in. So I was working for people like Ecotricity over here in the UK. So they're a green energy company. They're the fourth biggest energy company in the UK. Great client to work with because I really believed in what they were doing, which is really, turning their energy bills into windmills. That's their saying. Anyway, that's another story. But so my wife and I, and the boys were growing up. One of them was living with his girlfriend, and the other one was off at catering college and all this sort of stuff. So we basically said, we had to sell the house because of because my business was going like that, because I'd lost so much interest in it, and it was like, oh, racking up the debt. Oh, gonna have to sell the house. Terrible situation to be in, really, in that very logical and practical world of let's make ends meet. But that's what happened. And
I
so
can.
we said to the universe, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So we said to the universe, where do you want us?
Yeah.
As simple as that. Where do you want us? And what happened was that straight away, all of the job opportunities for the sort of job that my wife was looking for started showing up in a town called Leeds, which is in the north of the country. So we said, oh, well, we'll go and have a look up there. So we came up and had a look round, and Nikki got a job straight away working in Leeds, and we ended up moving house and living in the south of the Yorkshire Dales for a few years, sorting our financial situation out. But you see, the thing is that we said goodbye to Jane before we left the house. We went round to the room, and again, we were still at that time always using the dowsing, and she was there. Jane was, absolutely. The presence is so strong that it's just like, well, yeah, you're there. And we explained that we were going to be leaving, and she said, yes, I know. And it's like, yeah, I know, because she would know everything before we did. Really, is what that was the standard thing.
Right.
So I got pretty choked up about the fact that we were leaving her in the house and all of that, and I was sort of, prolonging this goodbye and getting tears welling up, and she just went, yeah, bye, and then disappeared. Disappeared. And of course, what I realized later is that they don't have the same kind of emotional energy that we have. It's like, yeah, it's all very different perspective on all of those sort of emotional exchanges. So she just disappeared into nothing, away from us in that room. And I turned to Nick and I said, well, that wasn't very nice, was it? That was that. So we left her there, moved house, and then about 6 weeks later, probably about 6 weeks, I was meditating in the house we were renting up here in the north, and there was a very, very familiar feeling that appeared in the room. And I said, Jane, is that you? And she said, yep. I'm like, what are you doing here? She said, well, nobody said I couldn't leave the house, so I'm here if you want to chat. It's like, oh, I don't understand this. But basically, she's now part of my healing team. So I've got various individual personalities that I work with in doing the house healing. And very often I actually ask Jane to go into a property to hold the space in that role of guardian energy. But obviously she's going in as a surrogate one that's holding the space, so that actually a family or the individuals don't experience, a tumultuous change suddenly as we start to access the energy and to help them shift.
No,
So she's part of my team.
Part of the team. Is she angelic?
What's the word for it? I don't know.
Was she a person and then died, or is she?
She wasn't. She was a person and then died. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's not okay. So she's just been given this job to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask you if she's angelic is because you talk about connecting with the archangel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I call on the archangels for their assistance and their blessing and their power for doing the house healing. So the house healing work itself, we go in and we plot and we sit there and get given information about what to put on the floor plan, what issues are affecting the family. Okay, so we gather the information, but then we sit in meditation, and basically we're asking upstairs, we're asking the management to do the energy shifting. Right. We don't know what, we don't know. So we're just acting in our role as human, we're acting as our role of observer. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Wow. Listen, you guys, the book is called Spirit and Earth. It's by Tim Walter. How do people find you? Tell everybody your contact information before we get out of here today, Tim.
Yeah, just quickly, Spirit and Earth, which is this one, hard copy, available from Amazon, UK and USA. That really is about making the connection to upstairs so simple. So it's not specifically about house healing. It's about the whole connectivity thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm working on a book more about the house healing itself. But you can find me at www.knightsrose.com. That's KNIGHTSROSE.com. Or go over to YouTube and put in Tim Walter Dowster or at Tim Walter. Yeah, that'll get me. That should show up. The channel there. We've got a nice little community there.
I love it.
And there's sort of loads of videos on there about dowsing, about the connection to everything, and some of the quantum science as well, for if any of your viewers are into that sort of
I
thing.
think it's great. I think it's fantastic. This has really been a enlightening show. You've taught me a lot that I didn't know.
Oh, I don't think I have, but but it's been lovely. So thank you for allowing me to talk.
You guys, this is Tim Walter. His book is Spirit and Earth. This has been a really interesting conversation. I hope you'll come back and see me again for your next book.
Sure, absolutely, of course, yeah.
All
No
right.
worries.
All right, you guys. Hey, we're going to get out of here for today, but this is Nancy, you're out. This is High Road to Humanity. If anybody needs a psychic reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com, and you can book your date and time with me. Thanks again, Tim. Everybody have a terrific week, and God bless. Please join me next time on the High Road with stories full of love and hope for our future. You can find High Road to Humanity on TOGINET Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now watch the High Road on BINGE TV networks. My channel is High Road to Humanity. Have a blessed week, and know by staying on the High Road, you will make it to your destination. For a psychic empath reading, visit my website, nancyyearout.com, to book your date and time with me. I will deliver your messages from the angels, and God bless.